We're in a new month. We are in a new month, and we have a new theme, and it's called the evolution of new thought. And I just want to remind you that we use the same themes that the Science of Mind magazine uses. So we are in alignment with the magazine. So if you would like to read more about the theme, get the magazine. A new thought. There you go. Living in harmony. Okay, I love it. So yes, so this is the evolution of New Thought Month. And so today's talk is a new thought, and years and years and years ago, Mary Manning Morrissey said, our movement is called New Thought, but when was the last time you had one? Right? So, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about having a new thought. In fact, our teaching is really often called New Thought, Ancient Wisdom, because its roots go way, way, way back. It really is not new thought, is it? It's ancient wisdom. In fact, our teaching is rooted in Socrates' ideas of universal science. So it goes way back, into the Egyptian teachings of know thyself, which was printed on the front of their many temples, and it takes its truth also from the Essenes of the 1st and 2nd century BCE, where we got the Dead Sea Scrolls from, right? And also the Gnostics of the 1st century, of the Common Era. They spoke these truths also. And so all of that ancient wisdom then comes through the European Enlightenment, right? And it finds itself in the New World, in America, with the advent of the Transcendentalist movement of the early 1800s. And so what came together was this teaching that flourished during what is called in this country the Third Great Awakening. And it was a religious transformation that occurred in the 1800s when Emanuel Swedenborg came to this country. He founded what was called the New Church at that time. And it was really a kind of a new idea for this country because we were turning away from Calvinism and the idea that some people were saved and some people were not, and you couldn't do a thing about it, right? To this idea of being saved through grace, then being saved through works. And so this new thought teaching sort of grew out of that. Ralph Waldo Emerson was called the founder of New Thought. His writings on self-reliance and the oversoul, and his writings on transcendentalism. Then along comes Phineas Parkhurst Quimby, who himself was inspired by the writings of Franz Mesmer. And he created what is called New Thought today. In fact, I think he was the one that actually originally used that term, although some documents say it was Patterson, but I don't know. Anyway, Phineas Parkhurst Quimby is basically what we would consider the father of New Thought. And he worked in the field, and he cured people with this mental science of ours. He cured Julius Dresser and his wife, Annette Seabury, and they went on to write about this teaching. Their son Horatio actually became a historian of this movement of ours called New Thought. Quimby healed Mary Baker Eddy, who went on to found Christian Science movement. He healed Warren Felt Evans. They wrote extensively about this science of ours, this philosophical and scientific method of healing with affirmative prayer. Emma Curtis Hopkins, who herself was a student of Mary Baker Eddy's, went on to become what we call the teacher of teachers, because she instructed Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, who went on to found Unity, the International Unity Movement. She taught Nona Brooks and Melinda Kramer, who went on to found Divine Science, and it was actually Divine Science that Ernest Holmes was ordained into the ministry of. Her last student, she was in her 80s at that time, her last student was Ernest Holmes. And Ernest Holmes went on to found our faith tradition, religious science, this whole religious science movement. He wrote the Science of Mind textbook, and I bet you didn't know this, but he wrote over 88 other books. We keep going back to the same 3, 4, or 5, and keep rereading them, this thing called life, this thing called you. But he wrote over 88 books and magazine articles and classes, and actually had a line of greeting cards. Did you know that? He had a line of greeting cards that sold very well in LA in the 40s and 50s. Anyway, And then he started the Science of Mind magazine in October of 1927. And it is in continuous publication. It has never stopped. Is it up there? There it is. That is the first issue of the Science of Mind magazine, October of 1927. A magazine of Christian philosophy. That ends the debate right there, okay? That's the way it is. That's what he called it. And that's what we are, technically, even though we are, what he said, open at the top, and we honor all paths to God. There you go. That's it. That was the first religious science magazine. And it is the oldest magazine in continuous publication in this country. And I bet you all thought it was Reader's Digest, didn't you? But no, they stopped publishing back in the 70s for a couple of years. So here we are, the longest continuously published magazine in the country. Yeah, how about that? You can give it a clap. So go buy a copy on the way out. Okay, so his teaching is like the premier teaching on modern metaphysics. It's a spiritual philosophy. It has brought people around the world to really examine their own personal cosmology, right? The essence of what is God and what is my place in it. So here's a little bit about Ernest Holmes. He was born in 1887. On a small farm in Maine, the youngest of 9 sons. Could you imagine? Yeah, really. They called him the question mark because he was always asking why. Why? He discovered the writings of Emerson very young, and so he just loved it. He said Emerson was like drinking water to him. He couldn't live without it. And then, as his quest for his own personal cosmology intensified, he began studying everything, literature and art and philosophy and religion, all different religions. And he was drawn to the teachings of Mary Baker Eddy and Christian Science. And then, he went on to explore the writings of just went out of my head, Christian Larson, Ralph Waldo Trine, Horatio Dresser. He found Phineas Parkhurst Quimby. And then at the age of 25, he moved to Venice. Right? Moved to Venice, California. Not Venice, Italy. Whoops. Venice, California. His brother was out here. His brother was a Congregationalist minister. So he moved to Venice, California, and he discovered the writings of Thomas Troward. Right? And so there he was. He had the scope and the poetry and the essence and the beauty of Emerson's writings. And then he had the practicality, the application of Thomas Troward's writings. And he was like, aha, this puts it together for him. This is the thing itself, and this is the way it works. And he went on to begin to lecture on these things. And so his audiences grew and grew and grew. He was ordained, like I said, as a divine science minister. And then he published his first book in 1919, Creative Mind, followed by Creative Mind and Success, because apparently he found a lot of success in that. He continued. He wrote the Science of Mind textbook, which became the textbook of our philosophy. He wrote it in 1922, actually, but it was originally copyrighted by his wife in 26. And then he revised it in 38, and that is the copy that we read to this day. They say it's in its 45th printing. I don't know. I think it's probably more than that. But I'm not really sure. Anyway, it's printed in languages all over the world. And people had really urged him at that point to begin a foundation, to start something in LA so that he can begin to, create an organization around this teaching. And so he refused at first, but then he gave in. And he created the Institute of Religious Science and School of Philosophy in 1927. The magazine, you saw, was published in October, and in that same year, he married his darling wife, Hazel. And they would be inseparable for 30 years. In 53, the Institute of Religious Science became the Church of Religious Science. In 57, Hazel passed, and then Ernest Holmes made his transition in 1960. He left no children, but he left this philosophy. He left this amazing philosophy and way of life. And in 1958, he said this. He said, "We have launched a movement which, in the next 100 years, will be the great new religious impulsion of modern time, far exceeding in its capacity to envelop the world anything that has happened since Islam started. We have to have the same faith in what we teach and practice that the scientist has, or that the gardener has. And when that great simplicity shall have plumbed and penetrated this density of ours, this human stolidness and stupidity, I love it, this debauchery of the intellect and soul, something new and wonderful will happen. It is the only thing that will keep the world from destroying itself. So sit with that for a minute. Who said he wasn't passionate? So that is the history of New Thought, right? That is the history of New Thought. This is where we find ourselves today. So what is next for us? For the evolution of New Thought? Where do we go from here? What's next for our faith tradition? You know, this is a philosophy of individual transformation, yes? We start here. We always start within. This is the place where we go. And you know, because of that, some people, I think, have falsely concluded that we are a solitary transformational philosophy, but I don't really think that that's true. I think as we change ourselves, as we transform individually, we silently give permission for those people around us to transform, do we not? Right? It just simply grows from that individual transformation to those people around us, to those people who hear us talk. And then they're like, well, why are you so darn happy? You know, or why are you so peaceful in the midst of chaos? Well, because I have this philosophy that. So as we transform within, as we clean up our side of the street, we give permission for those around us to transform in our presence. We hold the idea, perfect God, perfect presence, perfect person, no matter who is in front of us, right? No matter who we are interacting with, we hold the truth. We know the truth for them. And then they silently get it. Maybe sometimes verbally get it. Maybe sometimes the 2x4 get it, you know? But they get it nonetheless, right? We hold for the planet, for the population, the truth of the oneness of all life, the truth that each and every one of us is an outpicturing of the divine, the truth that each one of us is whole, perfect, and complete in our essence. We hold that for people, and they get it. They get it. We see others as spirit in form, freeing them up to express their perfection. We see others as the reflection of the divine. We free ourselves first, yes, and then we allow others to be freed in our presence. Who's read the textbook? I wish I had it here. I don't. The textbook, the Science of Mind textbook. Read it backwards and forwards and backwards, right? I have mine, and every single page is almost highlighted by different colors depending on what year I read it and reread it. There's highlighting in yellow, and then there's highlighting in green, and then pink, and then orange. It looks the rainbow, actually. It's quite lovely. But if you have not read the textbook, because it's a big sucker, right? You know, you can look at it on the shelf and go, oh, you know, this is a lot. What I would encourage you to do, and I would invite you to do, is just to read the first 4 chapters of the introduction. Just read the first 4 chapters of the introduction. The thing itself, the way it works, what it does, how to use it. 4 chapters in the introduction, not even in chapter 1. This tells you everything you need to know about our philosophy. The foundation of our teaching, simplistically, what we practice, simplistically. Now, I didn't say it's easy, but it is really, really simple. There's not a lot to it. And Ernest Holmes wrote the thing itself, God, Spirit, the Christ consciousness, the Buddha mind, Allah, the ground of all being, Source, the big kahuna, whatever you would like to call it, you know, Bob. I call it Bob sometimes when I'm feeling particularly, intimate. The thing itself, the ineffable, the undefinable ground of all being, the energy that we are all immersed in and that is immersed in us, that every single cell and molecule and subatomic particle of our being is made of. It is the source and supply of everything. That's the thing itself. That is the thing itself. That absolute everything of the universe and the space in between. And then the way it works. Well, Ernest Holmes was really clear about this. The way it works is through us. That's it. That Spirit has no way of creating in the universe, but through its creations. When the physical world outpictured, there you have this incredible creative force. And it continues to create. It wasn't something that happened, 17 billion years ago, or 6,000, depending on what you believe. It's not something that just happened and then stopped. It is continuing to happen. It continues to outpicture. It continues to create. It creates and creates and creates, and it creates through its creations. And trees are that, and fish are that, and we are that. And we are the microcosm of the macrocosm of Spirit. We create our own lives. We co-create, using and aligning with that same power, we co-create conditions around us. So that's the way it works. It works through us. It can only work for us by working through us. We are the medium through which conditions change in our lives, right? We say that all the time. Prayer changes things. Why? Because prayer changes us. Because we become clear as we keep going back to prayer, as we keep going back to our affirmations, when we keep going back to our visioning and our meditation, we become that clear vessel through which this energy can flow into our lives, changing conditions around us. That is the way it works. We are the place where heaven and earth meet, are we not? We are spiritual beings temporarily housed in these little vehicles, right? And we're blindly marching through life sometimes, sometimes consciously, sometimes not, bumping up against each other. And Spirit is animating us. That is the only thing that's true about us, is that we're Spirit, right even down to the physical body. It's just Spirit in form. So we're rolling through life and we're doing our thing, and we are absolutely allowing Spirit to flow through us into form. We are the place where heaven and earth meets. We are the place where Ernest Holmes said, love points the way, right? Love points the way. We do the things that give us bliss. We do the things that we love. We do the things we're attracted to. Love points the way, and law makes the way possible. And law is that place that simply receives the impress of our thoughts, and it goes to work on it, changing the conditions on our lives, changing the conditions around us. So the thing itself, what it is, right? The way it works. What it does. Ernest Holmes said, love rules through law. Love rules through law. So everything that we do can be divinely guided by love. Everything we do can be divinely guided by love. This is what it does. Love is the seed, right? We always talk about they say, the question is always, how do you explain religious science to someone who's never been in a religious science faith tradition or a new thought faith tradition? And what do we always say? Seed, soil, plant. That's right. That is the analogy all the time. Seed is the thought. It's planted into a receptive medium called soil or like soil. And then what happens? Well, a plant sprouts. So something happens in the material world. A manifestation takes place. Seed, soil, plant. That's what it does. Love rules through law. So love, the seed, points the way. Law, the soil, makes the way possible. And then voila, we have a plant. So you plant a tomato seed, you're going to get a tomato plant. You plant a watermelon seed, you're going to get a watermelon. You plant a seed of joy and happiness, you're going to get joy and happiness. You plant a seed of abundance, you're going to get abundance. Now, most people begin with the idea that I know the principle of intelligence within me directs me. This is what Ernest Holmes said, right? I'm stuck. I know the principle of intelligence within me directs me. And this is how they pray, because I am one with that, and I know this. I absolutely know this. And then they finish with, oh, God, I hope that works. Right? How many times have you done that? I put my children to sleep. I remember my youngest when he was really, really little. And we would do our whole little bedtime ritual. You know, there was the tubby, and then there was the jammies, and tuck him in bed and give him his little glow worm, you know, his little nightlight. Then we would sing our little song. Then I would do the little prayer. And it was wonderful. And he had the habit of popping up out of bed. And then, after I'd close the door and I just, and he would be out 2 seconds later. It's like, yeah, another song, another, it's like, oh my gosh. So I remember one night doing the song, doing the prayer. You have no idea how many times I knew the wholeness of Cookie Monster. I mean, it was amazing. It was really lovely. So I would do my prayer, my 5-step prayer treatment, say goodnight, close the door, and I walked away. As I'm going down the hallway, I'm thinking to myself, oh, geez, I hope that works. And then I went, so I turned around and I went back into the room and I went, gonna do this all over again because I don't know. And we prayed all over again because that's what we do. We doubt, right? Do we? Or am I the only one? Am I the only one? Okay, so we doubt this. We finish with, oh, I hope it works. We entirely forgetting the positive, definite statement we just made. We just made it. And we start to wonder, is this simplicity working? Will this work? Is this good really mine? And Ernest Holmes said, this is not proper use of the principle. If you are doubting this and wondering if it's going to work, you've already added that seed of doubt. So now you have a seed of conviction and a seed of doubt, and they're planted side by side. Which one's going to sprout? I don't know. Which one are you giving more attention to? Right? Which one are you giving more attention to? So hope is kind of the baby steps here. Hope is kind of the baby steps here. Now, hope is good. I'm not bashing hope, but it's the baby steps. There should be no doubt. This is where we're going. We are going to pray to the point at which there is no doubt in our minds. And that's what Ernest Holmes said, steps 1 and 2, recognition and unification. Let us unify in this truth of this philosophy. Let us unify in the truth of our being. And then when we speak our word in step 3, we're speaking it with the power and authority that Jesus had. So yeah, things are going to change. So now we're up to that 4th little chapter in the introduction, how to use it. How to use it. Ernest Holmes said this, he said, one of the great difficulties of new thought is that we are likely to indulge in too much theory and too little practice. I love that. Yeah, we sit around and talk about it all the time. We talk about the principles. We talk about the way it works. We talk about all this really, really good stuff, but are we doing it? Are we doing it? Ernest Holmes, in addressing the graduate class of I don't know what year, but practitioners, said, here you are. Now take all the books and throw them out the window and go about doing the work. Do the work. Practice those principles. Make sure you prove it in your own life that this philosophy of ours has legs, that it's a provable thing, that it outpictures in the conditions in your lives and it changes the conditions around us. And he said we should say this. We should say this. I am a center of divine mind, a point of God-conscious life, truth, and action. My affairs are divinely guided and guarded into right action, into correct results. Everything I do, say, or think is stimulated by the truth. That is who we are. That is who we are. We are spiritual beings. There's nothing else true about us, but that we are using a power that has existed eternally and that we continue to use it constantly, whether or not we're conscious of it. We are still using this power that is greater than we are. We are still aligning with this power that is greater than we are, and we are still outpicturing conditions in our lives based on what we're aligning with. So wouldn't it be great if we became more conscious of what it is we're aligning with? What we're aligning with. New thought, ancient principles. Ancient principles. There is a power in the universe greater than we are, and we are able to use it. That's how Ernest Holmes started every single one of his radio shows, right? There is a power in the universe greater than we are, and we can use it. And I would add, and it can use us, because it does. That's what it does. It uses us to transform our lives. It uses us to transform the people around us. It uses us to transform the conditions of our lives into something greater, a greater sense of livingness than we've ever had before. And that's why we study New Thought, and that's why we practice these principles, and that's why we live We live the truth of this teaching. Every day we turn away, do we not? We turn away from the human race consciousness, the prevailing wind that flows through our lives. You know, who goes to the water cooler? I don't even know if they have those anymore in offices. They do? Okay, somebody, yes. You know, the water cooler talk, the ain't it awful stuff, the oh my God, the economy's broken, or the government's broken, or this. We stand in opposition of all of that because they're just conditions also, and they change in a heartbeat, don't they? They change all the time because they're just conditions. So what we do is we align with the truth. We align with a truth that is greater than any condition. And we stand in opposition to those things that are simply conditions. And they transform all around us all the time. We are here to live that greater life of spirit as us, to know and accept right down to the cellular level that we are the divine in form. We are the divine in form. There is nothing else true about us but that. Ernest Holmes said this. He said, eternal unfoldment seems to be the law of our being. But what is that unfolds? Is it the principle or the individuality? The answer is simple. We all know that principles do not evolve while people do. Our evolution, then, consists of a constant acquiring of knowledge, leading to a more profound understanding of the principles. But our understanding of the principles do not create them. Principles are immutable, changeless, and eternal. We're simply aligning with a power that has always existed, that will always exist. We are aligning with it, and we are allowing it to flow through us into the conditions around us and change our lives for the better. Our pursuit, our practice is to always have a greater understanding of these principles, to practice these principles, to use the tools that we are provided by with this teaching of ours, and to live a greater life as spirit and form. That's who we are. That is who we are. Thank you.